Counsel?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Connor, do you currently live in Baker County?
No, sir.
Where do you live currently?
South Carolina.
Have you ever lived in Baker County?
Yes, sir.
What years?
2019 to 2022.
During that period of time, did you come to know a Rhonda Jewell?
Yes, sir.
You seen this Jewell in the courtroom?
Yes.
Ms. Connor, when you met Rhonda Jewell, did there come a time when you asked her to babysit or care for any of your children?
Yes, sir.
How many children did you have back in 2019, 2022?
6.
I'm sorry?
6.
6. Which children did you ask her to babysit or care for?
My youngest 2.
And how old were they at the time?
My youngest was born in 2020, and the other one was 18 months older.
18 months older?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Did Mrs. Rhonda Jewell care for your children in your home or somewhere else?
Usually at hers.
At her home?
Mm-hmm.
And how often, over a period of months or years, did she care for your 2 children?
As needed, maybe 3 or 4 times a month.
Okay. Would she normally pick up your kids from your home?
It wasn't scheduled, however, it was convenient for us.
Okay. When she kept the kids, you weren't there. You went off and did what you were doing, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I understand you had some foster kids that you had to care for as well, correct?
Yes, sir.
Was there ever a time that you believed that Rhonda Jewell was not providing good quality care for your 2 kids?
Never.
Did you ever have any concerns about the care that she was providing?
Never.
Did you have occasions to observe Rhonda Jewell interact with your 2 children?
Often, yes, sir.
And how would you describe that interaction?
Very hands-on. Always doing activities and things with them.
I'm sorry?
Always doing activities with them. A very hands-on person.
Your 2 children, one was a boy and one was a girl.
Yes, sir.
Did your kids call Rhonda Jewell by a nickname?
A rah-rah.
I have no other questions, Your Honor.
Any cross-examination of this witness?
Very brief, Your Honor. Good afternoon. Just want to make it clear that you know nothing about this case. Is that correct? Meaning you were not there the day
Correct.
that this occurred?
Correct.
You were not at the house on Estate Street or anything of that nature?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of this witness?
No, sir.
Okay, we're going to excuse you, subject to being recalled, so if you'll just step back out, you may be called shortly. Call your next witness, please.
Mike Rogers.
Thank you, sir. Counsel?
Mr. Rogers, how long have you lived in Baker County?
Roughly since 2001.
2001?
Yes, sir.
Do you know Rhonda Jewell?
Yes, sir.
How did you first meet Rhonda Jewell?
Actually, I worked with Winn-Dixie in the early 90s. I worked with her when I was at Winn-Dixie.
Is that here over in Jacksonville?
No, right here in McClenny.
Right here in McLean, okay. After you stopped working with Ms. Jewell, did you re-encounter her at some point after that?
Throughout the years, yes, sir.
Did there ever come a time when you asked Rhonda Jewell to care or sit for any of your children?
Yes, sir, I did.
And how many children do you currently have?
2.
And can you tell me their ages?
At this time, 6 and 8.
Those a boy and a girl or
2 girls.
2 girls? Mr. Rogers, do you remember when you asked Rhonda Jewell to care or sit for your children?
Yes, sir. It was probably in late October of 2016 when my oldest daughter was born.
When was she born?
She was born in September.
Was there a reason you were seeking out some child care?
Yes, sir. At the time, me and my wife didn't. We had a family member that was going to keep our kids, and it kind of fell through. So I was kind of grabbing at strings to try to find someone to watch my kids, so my wife could go back to work and myself can go back to work.
And how did you ask Mrs. Jewell to do this? Where did you find her at?
I was actually in the right next door to where her. I was next door to where her sister has a beauty salon, and I had walked inside the beauty salon and was asking.
Did Ms. Jewell volunteer to do that?
Yes, sir.
Did you immediately hire her at that point?
No, not at that point. I asked her to come meet my wife because my wife did not know her at the time.
Did that occur?
Yes, sir.
So after she met with your wife, was she asked or hired to babysit
Yes,
or
sir,
care
she was.
for your daughter that was born in 2016?
Yes, sir.
Starting after that, how often did she babysit or care for your child?
She cared for the kids as long as I cared for the one child at the time before we had the second child during school hours of between 7:30 and 3:30 every day, whenever school was open.
When your second child came along 2 years or so later, do you remember, did you ask her to start watching that child as well?
Yes, sir, I did, which was, she was born in February 18 and of 2018, and then she started watching her in late April of 2018.
So at one point she was watching both of them?
Sir?
One point she was watching both of them?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Where did she normally watch your children at?
At my house.
That's here in Baker County?
Yes, sir.
Did she ever take them anywhere or watch them anywhere else?
Yes, sir. She took them to the park and so forth, and sometimes would come and take them to her house.
Did you ask Mrs. Jewell to also go on vacations to help watch the children as well?
Yes, sir, I sure did.
When did that start?
Started after the second child because of having two children was a little bit more of a handful, so I asked her to come on vacation with us and help us watch the children.
When did she stop watching your two kids? Approximately.
Approximately about a year ago.
Before this incident we're here about?
Yes, sir.
Was there ever a time, Mr. Rogers, when Mrs. Jewell had your children for an extended period of time?
Yes, sir. As many know, in 2022, I had a cardiac arrest and was in a hospital for 3 weeks. I had emergency surgery, had a PICC valve put in, and was out for, I was unconscious for 2 weeks, and then also after the third week, I came home. So she kept my children 24 hours.
For 24 hours a day for approximately 3 weeks?
Yes, for 21 days, actually.
How many?
21 days.
21 days. At any point in time, during all the times that Rhonda Jewell cared for your children, did you ever have any concerns for their safety?
No, sir.
Were they well cared for?
Yes, sir.
Did she appear engaged and attached to your children?
Very attached to my kids.
You had occasions to be around her when she was actually caring for your kids?
Yes, sir, I was.
Just a moment. Mr. Rogers, are you aware of Rhonda Jewell's reputation in the community for providing good quality child care?
Objection again, Your Honor.
Judges,
You can ask that one question, and then we'll see if he does the next one.
Yes, sir.
You are?
Yes, sir. That was the reason why I asked her to watch my children.
Have you spoken to other people in the community about Rhonda Jewell's child care abilities?
Yes, sir.
I have another question, Your Honor.
State have any questions?
Just to make it clear, on the day that this occurred of July 19th, you were not anywhere near State Street. You were not a witness to what occurred on that day.
No, sir, I was at work.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions of this witness?
No other questions.
Sir, you are excused, subject to recall, so that means if you'll just wait outside for a little while. Let's see. Would you call your next witness, please?
I have no other current witnesses, Your Honor.
Thank you, Ms. Jewell. And obviously, you've just introduced yourself to the jury. Ms. Jewell, how old are you?
I am currently 46.
And are you married?
Yes, ma'am.
And who is your husband?
Robert Jewell.
How long have you been married?
December will be 27 years.
And do you have any children?
Yes, ma'am.
How many children do you have?
3.
How old are your children currently?
The oldest is 25. The second is 22. And the last one is 19.
And you have 2 boys and a girl, is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
How old is your daughter?
19.
Back in May of 2023, last year, how old would your daughter have been?
18.
And had she just graduated from high school around that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Obviously, you have raised your 3 children. Have you ever acted as a nanny to other people's children?
Yes, ma'am.
And about how many children, if you know, have you nannied?
I started nannying at the age of 17, until I had my own children. So then I took care of my own children, and as they got older, I kept nieces and nephews, and then full-time nannying for people that needed me.
Okay. Do you know about when you started babysitting or nannying again?
I was 17 years old.
I'm sorry, after you took the break with your own kids, when did you start again?
About 2017.
And can you name some of the people whose children you babysat?
I kept Mike and Kaylee Rogers, 2 kids. Ashley Altman's 1 child. Mallory Burnson Rosenpile, her 1 child. Emily Tedesco, 1 child. Angela Connor, 2 children.
Is it fair to say that you have consistently nannied at least several days a week for the large majority of time since 2016, 2017?
Yes, ma'am.
As you're taking care of these children, do you treat the children as you would treat your own children?
Absolutely, yes, ma'am.
And how do you feel about these kids?
Like they're my own.
Do you know Brooke Page?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you know Brooke?
She's a family friend. I've known her since she was in high school. She went to school with my nephew, graduated with my nephew. We went on vacations together. We went to dinners together 2-3 times a week. We done family functions together, each other's house with their family as well.
Did you consider Brooke's mother, Monique Carter, to be your best friend?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
With regard to your relationship to Monique, were you also close to her daughters, Brooke and Nevaeh?
Yes, ma'am.
Was it uncommon for you to talk to them, Brooke and Nevaeh, even when Monique wasn't around?
Yes, ma'am.
You would talk to them?
Mm-hmm.
And how did you communicate with them?
Text, Snapchat, Instagram.
And what sort of things would you guys talk or text about?
Do you want to go eat dinner? You want to come over tonight? Just, you want to go up to the, we went camping together a lot, so we would communicate about just family functions together.
Did you feel involved or engaged in their lives and what was going on in them as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor, relevance.
Overruled.
You said that you knew Brooke Page when she was in high school. Was that around the time that your family and Brooke's family reconnected?
I think she graduated after, no, she graduated before. My son graduated in 2017. So from 2017, her brother and my son graduated together. They played football, baseball together as children.
So since that time frame is when the 2 families came together and you had this close relationship that you described?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know Araya Page?
Yes, ma'am.
And how did you know Araya?
Araya was Brooke and Justice's daughter.
Can you describe for the jury what kind of relationship you had with Araya, Rhonda?
I loved her like she was my own. I was there for baby showers, weddings, of Brooke and Justice. I gravitated to her just like I would any baby.
And during the course of the dinners and vacations and things that you described that you did with this family, would you spend time with Araya during those events as well?
Absolutely.
Let's move forward to Miss Stacy Paschal. How do you know Stacy Paschal?
I nannied for her 3 children.
How did that come to be that you became her nanny?
She her nanny up and quit working for her without a notice. And I had several people call me and ask me if I would consider nannying for her. Just in one day, 2 or 3 people called me. And I told her that I would have to think about it and that I would call her within a few days.
At that time, had you been on a little bit of a hiatus from nannying, meaning had you stopped doing that for a little while?
Yes.
Okay. So it sounds as though Ms. Paschal reached out to you to do those services for her. Is that correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you actually eventually start watching her children?
Yes, ma'am.
How did that come about? Did Stacy, let me back up, did Stacy vet you in any fashion to make sure you would be okay and a good fit with her kids?
She called me and asked me. We talked about, the days, how long of days, and then just talked to her over the phone. And then I eventually went to her house and talked with her and her husband, sit down with her and her husband and her children. And I got to know them on a personal, on a level that a nanny would know them, and gravitated to them. They liked me. And that was
I'm sorry, go ahead.
That's what I loved about them, because they gravitated to me. They didn't know me. They were older. So,
Did that visit with them lead to you serving as their nanny?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you remember when you started watching Stacy Paschal's children?
Late February, maybe early March.
And would that have been of last year, 2023?
Yes, ma'am.
When you first started watching them, what days were you keeping them?
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
And where would you keep those children?
I would drive to her house from my house.
Sometimes when you arrived, were the children awake?
Not always.
And so sometimes they were sleeping and sometimes they were awake?
Yes, ma'am.
After you began keeping Stacy's children, did Brooke contact you about keeping Araya for her?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall when that was?
Late May, early June, somewhere in there.
Of last year?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, so 2023.
Yes, ma'am.
When Brooke reached out to you about keeping Araya, did you immediately say yes, or did you have to check on that?
No, I was working for Stacy, and I said I would have to talk to Stacy because I kept, them at her house. So I would have to, confer with her to see if it was okay. And so, but I would get back with her.
And I assume that Stacy said it was okay for you to keep Araya at her house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Do you recall whenever you started keeping Araya, what days of the week you kept her initially?
Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays.
And at that time, did those days line up generally with the days that you were keeping Stacy's children?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there ever schedule changes where you would sometimes have Araya and not have Stacy's children?
Yes, ma'am.
Were there ever schedule changes where sometimes you would have Stacy's children and not Araya?
Yes, ma'am.
So initially back in, I think you said late May, early June, you're keeping Stacy's twins, sometimes her daughter, and then you would have Araya as well.
Yes, ma'am.
And so generally at that time, you're having the twins and Araya those 3 days a week that you told us, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And shortly after starting to keep Araya those 3 days a week, did that schedule change?
Yes, ma'am. Brooke asked me if her mother-in-law, Miss Page, went on some kind of leave from work, workman's comp, and wanted to know if Miss Page could keep her on Thursdays. Would I mind?
And when you say Miss Page, are you speaking of Pamela Page?
Yes, ma'am.
And so it sounds as though Brooke is telling you that she would like to keep her on Thursday, and I think you said if you would mind. What do you mean by that?
She didn't want to interfere with her paying me to keep the child, and I said, that's fine. That's between you two. Whatever you want to do, this is fine with me.
Okay. So you had no opposition to
Oh, no, ma'am.
to Brooke letting Araya spend time with her
Yes, ma'am.
grandmother. Okay. During this time frame, as the schedule is starting to change, and I apologize, when did you say that happened after you started keeping Araya?
I had Araya about 3 weeks when she asked me this.
Okay. So sometime mid to late June, the schedule changed. Is that fair to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Around this time frame, what's going on in your life in particular, or in general, I should say?
Objection, relevance.
How is that going?
Your Honor, can we approach? No. It was testified into, on the interview, Detective Doherty asked Ms. Jewell about the things that were going on in her life, and that's what I'm trying to follow up on.
Okay, overruled.
Thank you. So can you describe for the jury kind of what's going on in general with your kids and your family situation?
My daughter just graduated high school, so we went through the whole graduation. We were moving her to college in Gainesville, and then we were scheduled to go in August to England for a baton twirling competition with her.
Is that the trip that was referenced when you were speaking with Detective Doherty on the interview earlier?
Yes, ma'am.
And I think you guys are scheduled to leave for that early August?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Would that have been the first time you guys would have been out of the country?
Yes, ma'am.
So kind of a big situation for you guys?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Moving forward to the time frame around July 19th. July 19th was a Wednesday, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Let's talk about the couple of weeks leading up to that situation and your schedules with the children, okay? Around that time frame, had Stacy Pascal changed your days in any fashion as to when you would keep her twins?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you explain to the jury what was going on there?
So I had the twins and their daughter usually on Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Her husband's schedule had changed, his job, and so he would work night shift and he would work day shift, and so he would be sleeping, and so she would call me ahead of time and say, "Hey, I don't need you to keep the boys. My husband's going to be home sleeping. My oldest daughter's going to keep him occupied until he gets up." So that schedule had changed within that 2 week span.
On the week of July 19th, did you keep, or the week including July 19th rather, did you keep the twins or their sister on Monday?
I did not.
And why was that?
She had called me and told me that she didn't need me that.
Objection, Your Honor, hearsay.
It is, but I'll allow her for context. Go ahead.
Thank you.
She called and told me that Kelly had off and that she did not need my services that day. So I didn't work.
Did you keep Araya that day on Monday?
I did.
And can you describe for the jury, usually whenever you kept Araya, how you would pick her up or how you would come to have her?
I would pick her up in the mornings between 8 and 8:30, depending on what time I needed to be at the Pascal's house. And I would pick her up and take her to the Pascal's house.
And usually when you would pick her up, how would Araya come to be in your vehicle?
I would pull up at Brooke Page's house, and she would put her in the car and buckle her up and put her diaper bag below the car seat
And where was the car seat usually located in your vehicle?
on the back passenger side.
So in the back seat.
Yes, ma'am.
Was Araya's car seat forward facing or rear facing at that time?
It was rear facing.
And usually when you would have Araya and then you would go to Stacy's house, what would you do with Araya when you got there to Stacy's house?
I would take her out, get her out in her car, the whole car seat, the diaper bag, take her inside. And then as I approached the inside, I would take her out of her car seat. I would place a blanket on the floor because she was crawling, and I would give her toys from the twins, like soft toys for her to play with, and put her on the floor to play with her and engage with her. And the twins loved her too, so they would get down in the floor and play with her as well as her daughter.
On this particular Monday of the week, including July 19th, you testified a few minutes ago that you did not have the twins on that day. Do you recall picking up Araya on that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do with Araya that day?
I picked her up and I met my daughter, and we went to Hardee's and ate breakfast. Me and my daughter, Araya, still drinking a bottle. So we engaged with her. We was there for an hour, just killing time. An hour and a half, just sitting and chit-chatting because she's got so much going on her life. We just was catching up, me and my daughter.
After you got done with breakfast with your daughter, did you run errands that day?
I did, yes, ma'am.
And then did you end up at a friend of yours' house?
Objection, Judge. Relevance.
I think it goes to show the schedule changes that are going on around that time frame, Your Honor.
Okay, let's move on though. Gotcha.
Thank you, Your Honor. Did Brooke Page pick Araya up from you that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And did she go to your friend's house to do that?
Yes, ma'am. After I run errands and my errands for the day, I went to my friend's house and Brooke had picked her up from there.
Backtracking to the Wednesday before that,
Yes, ma'am.
that Wednesday, generally, you would have had the twins and Araya, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Do you recall if you had the twins on that day?
I did not.
And did you have Araya that day?
Objection again, Your Honor.
I'm going to
Relevance.
sustain it. You're losing me. Try giving me some numbers for dates
Sure,
instead
yes,
of.
sir, yes, sir. So on the Wednesday before July 19th, which would have been July 12th,
Yes, ma'am.
you said you did not have the twins, correct?
Objection again, Your Honor. Relevance.
I'm going to sustain that. We're getting a little far afield.
Yes, sir. So going back to the Monday that we've been talking about, the 19th, for the record, that would have been the 17th of July, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Judge. Again, I will object because now we're going back to the 17th rather than the 19th.
Okay, well, we're at the 17th. Let's
Yes,
go.
sir.
Okay.
I was simply trying to provide.
Overruled,
Thank you.
overruled.
I was just trying to provide a court date as the judge requested. So let's move forward to the 19th.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So on that particular day, were you scheduled to keep both Araya and the twins?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Had you been asked to arrive at the Pascal home earlier than usual?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you ever discuss with Brooke Page that arrival change?
Yes, ma'am.
Was she aware that you were coming to pick Araya up early that day?
Yes, ma'am.
In the past, had you sometimes talked with Brooke about the fact that the time changes of when you had to be there at Stacy's home were irritating to you?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Your Honor. Leading and relevance.
It is leading. I'll sustain it on that basis.
Had you had conversations with Brooke in the past that were venting in nature regarding things of the way Stacy did?
Same objection, Judge.
Your Honor, I think it goes directly to the.
Overruled.
Thank you. Had you had those conversations in the past?
Yes, ma'am.
Was this something that you would talk to Brooke about in a friendly capacity?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So on this particular morning, did you go to Araya's house, to Brooke and Justice's house, to pick up Araya?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you describe for us what happened when you got there?
I had text Brooke or more, talked to my phone to Brooke that I would be there in a few minutes. And so Brooke always brings the baby out, opens the door and puts her in the buckles her up and puts her diaper bag in the floor up underneath the car seat.
And is that what Brooke did on that particular day?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Did you talk to Brooke at that time frame?
I was in the driver's seat and she opened up the door and we was just chit-chatting that way.
Was that a brief conversation with her?
Yes, ma'am.
When you left Brooks, where were you going?
To Stacy Pascal's house.
As you're driving, what are you thinking about, if you remember?
Getting to Stacy's house and being there on time because she had asked me to be there so she could leave by 8:15 before the boys got up.
Was she trying to avoid having to deal with her sons that morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Objection, Judge, speculative.
Sustained.
If the boys were awake when Stacy left, would it usually take her longer to get out the door?
Yes, ma'am.
So as you're driving, you told us a little bit about what you were thinking. Did you think about making any stops?
Yes, ma'am. I was going to pull through Burger King and get breakfast for the twins and their oldest sister.
At that point, would you have been looking for breakfast for Araya from the Burger King?
No, ma'am, because she was still drinking a bottle.
Okay. Was she also eating baby food of some sort at that time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. But nothing table food.
No, ma'am.
So did you actually stop at the Burger King?
I was stopped at the red light right there at the crossing and noticed that there was a long line at Burger King, and I knew that I would not be able to get through the line and be at work on time.
So what did you do?
So I just bypassed Burger King and went to Stacy's house.
Okay. And where is Stacy's house located?
I call it McClenny 2. I don't know the address.
Okay. So basically, you enter into McClenny to near just past the Burger King, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. What happened when you got to Stacy's?
I got there and I grabbed my water bottle, my cup, and I had my lunch in the little tray right there where the cup holder is, and I grabbed it. My phone was right there as well, and I grabbed it, got out of the car to get to the inside before 8:15 so she could leave. She didn't want to leave while the kids were, she didn't want them up. She wanted them asleep so she could get out and she wouldn't be late. And that's what I was thinking is get there and get there on time before they got up.
When you got out of the car, Rhonda, did you get Araya out of the car?
No, ma'am, I forgot I had her.
When you went inside, did you talk to Stacy?
For a brief minute.
Do you remember what you guys talked about?
Just one of the boys had failed the night before, and she was worried that it had bruised, and she wanted me to take a picture and send it to her. And we had talked about my doctor's appointment the next day, and was it.
As you're talking about the doctor's appointment the next day, are you talking with Stacy about the fact that you can't work the next day?
Yes, ma'am.
Leaving, Your Honor, objection.
Sustained.
Had you had a conversation with Stacy about your unavailability on Thursday?
Yes, ma'am.
And why were you not going to be available?
Because I have.
Objection, Your Honor, relevant.
How is that relevant?
Your Honor, it goes to the schedule changes and the things that Ms. Jewell is dealing with in the moment of what's going on.
Okay, I'll overrule the objection.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
Had you, I think the last question was, why was your schedule changing?
On Thursday, I was supposed to work for Stacy, but I had told her that I needed to go to the chiropractor, which I normally went to in McClenny. They didn't have any availability, so I called the one in Jacksonville in Oakleaf, and their first availability was at 10. So I told her I could come afterwards if she needed me to, and she said no, that it was okay. Her mother was coming to take care of the kids.
Were you physically in pain at that point?
I hurt, yes, ma'am, but I mean, it wasn't nothing that.
Did that pain interfere with your ability to take care of the children?
Oh, no, ma'am. I just needed to be, I call it manipulated. My hip and shoulder was bothering me.
And just to be clear, you didn't usually keep Araya on Thursday?
No, ma'am.
Okay. After you were scheduled to be off of work on Thursday, had you worked, did you have any other plans?
We were supposed to leave on vacation that Thursday afternoon.
So backing up to this July 19th date, you have gone to Stacy's house. You've walked inside and had this conversation with her. How long would you say you talked to Stacy before she left?
Give or take 2, 3, 4 minutes.
And did Stacy actually leave to go to work?
Yes, ma'am.
And what did you do then?
I had texted Brooke and told Brooke that Stacy had just left to go to work.
And the text message, I believe, said,
just left.
Shocker, just left, shocker. What did you mean by that?
Because Stacy would ask me to come to work, sometimes be there at 8:15. She wouldn't leave till 8:30. She would say she was on her way home, or I'll be home at 4:30. She wouldn't be there till 5. So that was a little, that's what that was about.
And you and Brooke had discussed those particular issues in the past.
Yes, ma'am.
So you texted Brooke that Stacy had left, and at that point, were the boys up, the twins?
They weren't up. They were up, I would say, within 2 to 3 minutes of me being there.
Okay, so within 2 to 3 minutes of you getting there and getting settled, the boys got up?
Yes, ma'am.
What did you guys do then?
One of them got up and noticed that I was there, and of course, rah-rah. And he said, "Will you rub my back?" So I sat on the couch and I rubbed his back. And a few minutes later, the other one got up, and I was sitting on the couch and I would rub their backs and just engaging with them. And, they were very loving children, so they wanted to engage.
Shortly after that, would you have prepared them breakfast that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you actually give them breakfast that day?
Yes, ma'am.
As the day goes along, what are you guys doing?
They have a little magnetic kind of toy that you can put together, it's like a puzzle type thing, but it's magnetic, and we'd sit on the floor and play with it, do a puzzle on the table, go to the toy room and play.
Were there ever times that you were on your phone with the children?
Yes, ma'am. We would watch TikTok together, just funny kids TikToks, stuff like that.
Fast forward to around 1 o'clock, 1:15. Do you recall Brooke arriving at the house?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Can you tell us what you were doing before you became aware that Miss Brooke Page was at the house? Immediately before.
I was preparing lunch for the kids
Where would you have been doing that?
in the kitchen.
And as you were preparing lunch for the children, where are they?
They're in the kitchen with me as well.
And what are you guys doing as you're cooking lunch?
We were singing, and then one wanted a hot dog, and one wanted French fries, and one wanted, strawberries, and one wanted grapes, and one wanted a juice. And so they were very hands-on, but different and rambunctious. So I was preparing all of their meals. So I had French fries on the stove frying, and I had a hot dog in the microwave, and, trying to get all of that juice made for them. And
Was all of that going on whenever you received the phone call from Brooke?
yes, ma'am.
Prior to receiving the phone call from Brooke Page, had you heard anyone knocking on the door?
No, ma'am, I didn't.
Did you hear the doorbell at all?
Ma'am?
Did you hear the doorbell at all?
No, ma'am.
Whenever Brooke Page called you, can you describe for us what happened?
She said, "Hey," and I said, "Hey," and she said, where? She said, "I'm here," and I said, "Here?" I said, "Where are you at?" And she said, "I'm at the door," and I said, "Oh," and
Did you go to the door at that time?
I did, but I didn't know why she was there, so I was like, "What are you doing?" And she said, "I'm here," and so I asked her where she was at, and she said, "I'm at the door."
Did you go to the front door?
I did.
What happened when you opened the front door?
She opened up the door, and I seen her, and I was still in shock while she was there. And so she had money in her hand and her keys. And that's when I realized I didn't get the baby in the car. I forgot the baby in the car. And so I pushed her out the way. And I was screaming, "Oh my God, Brooke, oh my God, oh my God, Brooke." And I could hear her saying, what? And I ran to the car. And I opened up the door, and she was still there. Ryan was still in the back seat.
What happened after you opened the door, Rhonda?
I opened up the back door, and she was left. I accidentally left her in the car. I was like, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, Brooke, oh my God, Brooke." And she said, "Call 911. And so I ran back inside. I couldn't find my phone. And when I found it, I have a code to get in. And I couldn't remember my code to get in my phone.
At that point, after you had found your phone and you're trying to get into it, have you come back outside to the car?
Ma'am,
At that point, after you had found your phone, but you couldn't remember the code to use it, did you come back out to the car?
I did.
Was Brooke on the phone at that time?
I think she was, yes, ma'am.
What did you do at that point?
I got the baby out of the car, out of the car seat.
What did you do with Araya after you got her out of the car seat?
I held her, and I prayed God would take me instead. I begged God to give her breath and to take me instead of her.
At some point, okay. At some point, did you take Araya inside the garage?
I did.
What did you do at that point?
Brooke came in, and I think she was on the phone with Miss Pager. I don't know who she was on the phone with, but she had told me to go to the road and wait for 911 to get there so they know where to go.
And did you do that?
I did.
I'm assuming that the EMTs and firefighters, they came.
Yes, ma'am.
What happened after they arrived?
I remember coming out of the garage, and I went to the front porch, and Brooke went somewhere. I don't remember where she went, but I just know we weren't together.
I'm sorry, you weren't.
We weren't together.
Did you go back inside Stacy's home at that point?
I remember that they were supposed to be eating lunch, and I went to go check and see if the stove was still on. I couldn't remember if I turned it off or what. And I just asked Maddie, the oldest daughter, I said, please keep him in here. Please keep him in here. Don't let him come outside.
And after you did that, did you go back outside?
I did.
Did you have to call Stacy Pascal?
I did.
And why did you call her?
Because the ambulance is always there, and I didn't want somebody to call and ask her what was going on. So I asked Stacy, I said, I need you to come home. And she said, what's going on? I said, I just need you to come home. I said, it's not your children. And she said, what's going on? And I said, I forgot the baby was in the car. And I forgot I had her. And
do you remember Stacy coming home?
Vaguely, yes, ma'am.
When Stacy got there, did she speak with you?
She said, what's going on? And I said, Stacy, oh my God, I accidentally left the baby in the car.
Did you get physically ill at that time, Rhonda?
Yes, ma'am.
And what actually happened?
I remember going to the car, getting the baby out of the car seat, or opening up the door, and I peed all over myself going to the car, and then I threw up.
Did you throw up after Stacy got there and you were having the conversation with her?
Yes, ma'am.
At that point when Stacy came, do you know where Brooke was, where Brooke Page was?
No, ma'am.
Did you ever have an opportunity to speak with Brooke after the EMTs arrived?
I did not.
At some point, the sheriff's office deputies asked you to go to the sheriff's office, correct?
Yes, ma'am.
And they actually took you there, I guess is the better way to put that. Is that right?
Yes, ma'am.
You've seen your statement that was played today. Was that the entire statement that you gave them?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Going back to this day, on September 19th of last year, did you get Araya out of the car when you got to Stacy's?
I'm sorry, so
When you arrived at Stacy's that morning, did you get her out of the car?
No, ma'am, I forgot I had her.
Did you realize that Araya was there and think that she was sleeping and it left her there and intended to come back and get her?
No, ma'am, I totally forgot I had her.
Thank you, Ms. Jewell. I don't have any other questions.
Thank you.
Cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Ms. Jewell, isn't it true that Brooke and Justice paid you to be a babysitter or a nanny for Araya?
Yes, sir.
I'm sorry?
Yes, sir.
That was your decision to be a babysitter for Araya. That was your choice.
Yes, sir.
You had an agreement with them to watch Araya,
Yes.
correct?
Yes, sir.
You had an agreement to care for Araya. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
You had an agreement to make sure, when Araya was with you, to make sure that she was safe. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Yes, sir.
You were her caregiver on the days that you watched her, correct?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it also true that Brooke and Justice paid you money because you were the babysitter on the days that you would watch her?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that on the days that you had Araya, that you were watching and caring for Araya, that you were supposed to feed her?
Yes, sir.
You were supposed to make her baby bottle.
Yes, sir.
You were supposed to mix her baby food together to feed her the formula.
Yes, sir.
Change her diaper when necessary.
Yes, sir.
If she needed baby lotion or baby wipe, you were responsible for that.
Yes, sir.
That was your decision that you told Brooke and Justice that you would do.
Yes, sir.
If she needed a blanket, you give her a blanket.
Yes, sir.
A change of clothes, you would take care of her and change her clothes, correct?
Yes, sir.
If she needed a pacifier, you give her a pacifier.
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
These are things that you agreed to do when you would be caring for Araya.
Yes, sir.
Let me take you to July 19th of 2023. On that day, you went to Brooke and Justice's house, correct?
Yes, sir.
You got up that morning from your house and you drove to Brooke and Justice's house, correct?
Yes, sir.
That was your job.
Yes, sir.
And you didn't forget to do that, correct?
Correct.
As I mentioned earlier, you were being paid to do this because it was your job.
Yes, sir.
So you drive your vehicle to Brooke and Justice's house. You did not forget how to get to her house, correct?
Correct.
You then pull into the driveway, correct?
Correct.
When you went to Brooke and Justice's house, isn't it true that you had your cell phone with you?
Yes, sir. It was the cup holder.
When you got to Brooke and Justice's house, didn't Brooke have Araya in the baby car seat?
Yes, sir.
And isn't it true that Brooke put Araya inside of your vehicle?
Yes, sir.
You were there, you were present, and you saw her put the baby in your vehicle.
Yes, sir.
You didn't forget that. You remember that.
Yes, sir.
You saw Brooke put the baby bag with all of the items inside of it inside of your vehicle.
Yes, sir.
You didn't forget that, correct?
Correct.
You then drove off in your vehicle with Araya in the vehicle with you, correct?
Yes, sir.
There was no one else in the vehicle but you and Araya.
Yes, sir.
You go to Burger King. How far would you say it is from Burger King to Brooke's house?
I didn't go through Burger King. I stopped at the red light.
The red light. How far approximately is it?
I'm not really sure. Not good with distance, so I don't know.
3-4 minutes?
Yes, yes, sir.
Did you forget about Araya in 3 or 4 minutes? You just picked her up.
Yes, sir. I did pick her up. Yes, sir. I
When
agree.
you got to the intersection of where Burger King is, did you forget that quickly that you had just picked up a baby?
It was not that quickly. I went from,
So you remembered she was in the car at that moment.
no, sir, I didn't. I picked her up.
Is it your testimony today, Ms. Jewell?
Judge, let the witness answer the question, please.
Sustain.
Go ahead and answer, Ms. Jewell.
I picked her up from Brooke and Justice's house at approximately 8 o'clock. And I went through McClenny, through the red lights. And I stopped at the red light at Burger King. And in my mind, I was picking up breakfast for all the kids. And I noticed that the line was long. And I would not make it to the Pascal's house by 8:15. So I just went ahead and went to the Pascal's house because I needed to be inside so she could leave by 8:15.
Okay, so let me back up a little bit. Let's go back to the red light, where the Burger King is. That's just a few minutes from Brooke and Justice's house, correct?
I would say 10 minutes.
My question to you is this. When you got to that red light, where the Burger King is, at that moment, did you forget Araya was in the car?
I did.
You did. So you had gotten up that morning with the job of driving to Brooke's house to get Araya, and your testimony today is after picking up the baby, in approximately 10 minutes, you forgot you had picked up the baby.
I forgot I had her. Yes, sir.
And that was your job, to get her. Correct?
Correct. Yes, sir.
And as you testified today, you've been doing this for years. Correct?
Yes, sir.
So you leave the Burger King, you go to Stacy's house, correct?
Yes, sir.
You're testifying today that you forgot Araya was in the car by the time you got to the intersection of where Burger King is and also at Stacy's house, correct?
Yes, sir.
So it would be fair to say that at that moment you have failed in your duties as a caregiver, correct?
I did not hear her. She didn't make a sound, so I didn't know I forgot she was in the car. I didn't hear her.
Ms. Jewell, that isn't my question.
Okay,
My
I'm
question
sorry.
is, would you agree, isn't it true? You're saying you forgot she was in the car. You failed as a nanny, as a babysitter, as a caregiver. You're saying you forgot about the baby.
Yes, sir.
So you failed in your duties, correct?
Yes, sir.
You get to Stacy's house and you get out of the car, correct?
Yes, sir.
You had your cell phone in your hand, a bag of chips, a can of chicken, and I think your water bottle or a cup of water, whatever it was, correct?
Yes, sir.
You didn't forget to take those things out of the car, correct?
Correct. It was sitting in front of me. Yes, sir.
You could have put Araya's blanket in front of you if you wanted to, but you didn't do that. That was your choice, correct?
No, sir. I didn't put her blanket in the car.
Was the blanket in the car?
It was, yes, sir. It was on, I guess it was in her bag or,
But you could have put it in the front. You could have put the whole baby bag in the front seat if you wanted to, but you didn't, correct?
I did not.
So your testimony today is you got up in the morning, you drove to Brooke's house and Justice's house, picked up the baby, and in approximately 15 minutes, you just forgot the baby was in the car, even though that was your job, correct?
Yes, sir. I forgot.
When you went into Stacy's house, you have to agree, isn't it true, you never got Araya out of the car.
No, sir. I did not.
You didn't get the baby bag out of the car either.
No, sir.
You get to Stacy's house, and at 8:17, you've seen the text. You send a text to... At 8:17, the text from you to Brooke is just left. Shocker, with a emoji, a happy face emoji. You remember that?
Yes, sir.
So you sent Brooke a text at 8:17. Ms. Jewell, you're saying that you forgot Araya's in the car. But at 8:17, you're texting her mom. There's no reason for you to even be texting Brooke unless you have her child. You're texting her at 8:17 in the morning, letting her know Stacy's left.
This was normal for us to text every day.
You're texting Araya's mom at 8:17.
Yes, sir.
You'd have to agree there's no reason to text her. The only reason is...
Objection, Your Honor, asked and answered.
Overruled. Cross-exam.
The only reason to text her is to let her know Stacy has left the house and you have Araya. Isn't that correct?
Yes, sir. But it stems from a conversation we had the day before about how Miss Pascal would come and, she would come and then she would leave when I got there. She would leave late. She would come late. She would leave late. That's what that was about.
Ms. Jewell, you are having contact with Araya's mom at 8:17. Araya's still in the car. And you're saying today that never rang a bell?
No, sir, it
That,
did
oh,
not.
the baby's in the car?
No, sir, it did
Even though
not.
you're communicating with the baby's mom?
No, sir, because that was normal for us to talk every day.
Okay. So let's go to 8:32. 8:32, you have another text communication with Brooke, Araya's mom. Once again, you're having communication with Araya's mom. And you're saying today that still at that moment, even though you're talking to the baby's mom, it never dawned on you, oh, geez, the baby is still in the car.
No, sir, I did not. I forgot that I had her. I forgot she was with me.
Let's go to 11:25.
Yes, sir.
At 11:25, you have a communication with Nevaeh Carter. This is Araya's aunt,
Yes.
the 18-year-old girl that took the stand yesterday. And you respond in some Snapchat, responding to some picture she posted where you say, I think it was, hey, cuties, Rhonda loves you.
Yes, sir.
Once again, you're having communication with Araya, the baby, with her aunt, Nevaeh.
Yes.
And you're testifying today that now for the third time, you're having communication with someone related to Araya, and it never dawned on you that Araya is in the car.
No, sir, it never did.
On July 19th of 2023, you left Araya in the car for over 5 hours, correct?
Yes, sir.
You never, ever fed her on that day, correct?
Yes, sir.
You never made a bottle for her, correct?
Correct.
Never changed her diaper, correct? Never changed her clothes, correct?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that you never used baby wipes or baby lotion or anything like that for her at all? Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
You never did anything that would be necessary for a babysitter or a caregiver to make sure that a 10-month-old baby would be safe. Isn't that accurate?
Yes, sir.
So you failed in your duty of care towards Araya, this 10-month-old child, correct?
Yes, sir.
You admit that.
Because I forgot I had her. Yes, sir.
But you failed in your duty.
Yes, sir.
You had mentioned, I think a little while earlier, that Araya at that age could crawl a little bit. I think you'd have to admit Araya was incapable of unbuckling herself from the car seat or opening a car door at that age. Would that be accurate?
Yes, sir.
On July 19th, Ms. Jewell, when this occurred, isn't it true that you never answered the door when Brooke knocked on it, the front door?
Yes, sir.
You never answered the door when she rang the doorbell, correct?
Correct.
Isn't it also true that Brooke would normally, as she testified, she'd come to the front door to pick up Araya?
Yes, sir.
And when she finally called you, you said, "What door are you at?" Correct?
Yes, sir.
On that day, Miss Jewell, were you drinking?
No, sir.
Were you on any kind of drugs or narcotics?
No, sir.
You mentioned you had like a shoulder pain or something. You weren't taking anything for that.
If I took anything, it was Tylenol or ibuprofen.
You mentioned to Investigator Dougherty when you were being interviewed about your child going to college, about going to England. You were focused on that day.
I had a lot of things going on.
But your responsibility was to care for Araya. You didn't do that. Isn't it true?
Yes, sir.
And that was your decision to watch her. You agreed to do that.
Yes, sir.
Miss Jewell, on July 19th, you remember getting up. You remember picking up Araya. You remember trying to go to Burger King, and you remember going to Stacy's house. You remember making text messages twice to Brooke. You remember a Snapchat response to Nevaeh. You remember all that, but you don't remember Araya,
Yes, sir.
even though that was your job.
Yes, sir. It was my job.
Would you agree that on July 19th, for those 5 hours, it was your responsibility to care for Araya? Is that a yes?
Yes, sir.
And you would agree that under your watch, Araya died? Is that true?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
At one moment, Your Honor.
Yes.
Miss Jewell, when you would care for Araya, you'd have to change her diaper.
Yes, sir.
But on that day, you didn't.
No, sir.
Judge, these have been asked 3 or 4 times already of the witness.
Sustained.
Isn't it true on that day of July 19th, you helped take the dog out or take the dog back in because the dog was outside and it was hot outside?
No, sir. I wasn't in charge of the dog. That was Maddie's dog.
You remember Maddie bringing the dog in?
No, sir, I do not. That was a communication with her and her mom.
You mentioned not hearing Araya when she was in the vehicle,
Yes, sir.
but it is your fault that Araya is dead because you left her in the car.
I forgot she was in the car. Yes, sir.
That's all I have, Your Honor.
Redirect.
Ms. Jewell, I have just a couple more questions for you, okay? The state pointed out that it was your job to take care of Araya. Was it also your job to take care of Stacy Pascal's twins and her daughter on that day as well?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you perform that job?
Yes, ma'am.
I think the state tried to pinpoint or get you to pinpoint at what point in the car you forgot Araya. Do you know between Brooke and Justice's house and Stacy's house at what point you forgot she was there?
No, ma'am.
Did Araya make any noise or anything to remind you that she was there?
No, ma'am.
And when you picked Araya up from Brooke and Justice Page's house on the morning of July 19th, who put her in the car?
Brooke did.
And who usually put her in the car?
Brooke.
And who put her baby bag in the car?
Brooke.
Who usually did that?
Brooke.
And where were both of those items located?
In the passenger side of the back seat.
Ms. Jewell, did you intentionally leave Araya Page in your car?
No, ma'am.
I have nothing further. Thank you.
Any other questions of this witness at this point?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Ms. Jewell, you can step down if you will, please, ma'am, and return to council table. We're going to take about a 15-minute recess. Please be back in your seats, ready to go at about 20 minutes till the hour. So we are in recess.
All right. 15 minutes.